Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
Recording live here from my dad's basement, and came over to do a little podcast with the whole, well, not the whole Martonik family, but the younger generation here. So got Kurt Martonik over here to my right. Across the corner, we got Mason, and we got a new guest on here, Tyler, who is Mason's younger brother.
Yep. Glad to be here.
Yeah. No, it's should be fun. I was thinking about it and hadn't seen Tyler since we hunted in South Dakota and everything, and I was like, oh, I'd love to get, you had a really good season, and I was like, it'd be fun to get him on the podcast and talking, and really haven't recapped any of the Western hunts other than my moose hunt, and was like, oh, maybe get together, tell some stories, and hear a little bit about it. I mean, I've heard all of your guys' stories to a point. Tyler's not as detailed, just a little bit through text and everything, so I figured it'd be fun to be able to recap that and roll through it. So, but we got a little bit of beers here and some big truck and some ranch waters and just kind of rolling through it. But Tyler, how long are you home for?
Tomorrow afternoon I'll head out, so I was able to come home for like 5 days.
Oh, nice.
Just long enough.
Yeah.
Starting to get itching back out there in Montana.
Well, it's getting a little cold out there now.
Surprisingly, it's like the same weather here as in Montana. It's like you get your inch of snow and back up to 30s, melts off, so it's been a weird winter so far out there.
Wow. Do you what do you do in the wintertime?
Oh, there? Boy.
Because, I mean, obviously I mean, you've been hunting since August and, working your job, but in between, hunting quite a bit, and then you fish a lot during the summer and spring. Mm-hmm. So spring too out there, don't you?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, so there's like a weird 3-month window of like where you scratch your head, sneak out like wolf hunting a little bit. But yeah, usually I'd start ice fishing and stuff like that. But I mean, come March, you're already shed hunting, so it's just January and February you got to occupy yourself for.
Yeah. I'm sure at that point it's probably a little bit nice to kind of have some downtime.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you take full advantage of being out there, too. I don't know if you remember how many days you spent either hunting or fishing or hiking around last year, but I remember it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, I think like last year was like 100 days of hunting. I mean, I don't even factor in fishing, so another 90 of fishing. So, I mean, there's probably 300 days of the year I'm out doing something outdoors.
Yeah. And that's with, working a full-time job too.
Yeah.
And exactly. From what I remember, you're putting in some long hours there. And so a lot of the times you're just getting out for a couple hours here and there.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of moving.
So I guess the good thing is like, summer's out there, like it's bright till 10 o'clock. So,
yeah.
I mean, you get off work 5:30. I'm like, you still got 4 hours to go do something. So I did definitely take advantage of that.
Yeah. And it also helps that, how tall are you?
6'3", 6'4".
Okay, yeah. And his legs are like 6 foot of it.
Oh, so, I cover ground.
So you cover ground. I remember looking, you had sent us your track once of going to scout. It was like, I don't know, it was like over a 4 mile per hour average, or maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was fast. Like it was like me running.
Yeah.
And that's how you were hiking into these spots. It's elevation gain to go scouting mule deer or something that you were doing.
Yeah, I'm good at scouting, shed hunting. Yeah, you can't find them walking 4 miles an hour.
Yeah. That makes sense. But I think so the all of us had done, well, mostly actually you guys had done more of the Western stuff than really I did this year, but well, I guess Mason and I were about the same, but there's a lot of trips that had happened throughout, and at the beginning I think it started out with pronghorn or antelope season in Montana. Was that your first hunt, Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, if you ignore like all the spring stuff that you guys do, like turkey and bear hunting, but yeah, I kicked off August 15th antelope in Montana. Okay.
And did you try hunting antelope last year because you just moved out to Montana last year, right?
Was it December 2021? So this is my second full season hunting now. So yeah, I did a lot of antelope hunting, like 70 plus stalks from August 15th to November. I was still hunting them, so didn't get any luck there last year. But yeah, so definitely had a better idea this year and started August 15th. Went out every day after work, so I'm lucky enough that there's a herd not too far away. And then I think I started combining scouting, like for high country deer, stuff like that. So just go up in the evening, glass the evening, camp out, and then come down in the morning, stalk antelope there, and just did that a couple weekends. And I think it was just like a random day after work, something like that. And I mean, I've been chasing this herd now for like 2 years. It's like a weird herd. I think there's usually around 40 of them. And then, so finally, half the time I'm driving up, walking to my glassing points, I'm like, oh, they're not in a stalkable spot. Just go home, do something else, fish. And that was just, that one day, it was like, I think they're killable or whatever. And they were starting to do a little bit of rutting there. So it was like late August. And so brought out like my doe and buck decoy, did nothing. I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, they're 100 yards out. I can't get any closer. Waited for them to walk off. And then I'm like, well, if I circle around, there's that one bush just big enough for a human to hide behind. I'm like, they're heading this way. I'm going to crawl out there. Got behind that bush. And next thing you know, I'm like, this is going to happen. Like, they're coming in like a little too close almost. Started ranging stuff. I'm like, okay, that little chunk of grass is 8 yards. I'm like, why am I ranging? And then I see the next one. I'm like, 35. I'm like, okay, they're in range no matter what. And next thing you know, I just see their shadows right on the other side of the bush, like 4 yards away. Oh. So single file, 37 of them. Buck's the very last one, of course. And like, I don't know about you guys with antelope experience, like unreal eyesight. Like they're like more skittish than like, I don't know, any animal really. And then so they start going single file, and then they start feeding right in front of me at 15 yards. I'm like, well, I'm not going to be able to draw back or anything. So like 20 minutes goes by. 40 antelope, sub 20 yards, and then finally they all start getting back in single file to keep walking, and the buck's the last one. I'm like, all right. So then draw back. They all jump 4 feet up in the air. They're all freaking out, like something just happened. And then at that point he was like hard quartering. I'm like, he's close or whatever. I don't know what happened, but essentially I hit it like in the front shoulder, neck, ran off a little bit and got a second shot. I mean, after work, got it done, first stalk like of that day at least, and then it was pretty sweet. So got my ball rolling. Yeah.
Well, so with hunting antelope, there is that kind of the strategy? Try to see where they're going and get ahead into a position and wait, versus like saying they're in a position and trying to follow them and stalk, or like what? Because I've never personally hunted them, so and Kurt can give some comments here too. But like as far as I've heard, they're one of the hardest animals to spot and stalk, because they're like, if you want to get good at stalking, stalk a bunch of pronghorn. It's just like super difficult to be able to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess I could have to throw out, like, this is not your normal antelope herd or location. Like, there's no sagebrush. Like, they're almost like swamp antelope, like where I'm hunting. Like, there's rivers everywhere. There's willows. So it's almost like they live out in these, like, islands, just, like, of grass. 100 yards surrounded by willows and stuff. So I personally can't really stalk. So almost daily, like, I was stalking 100 yards, physically can't get any closer. And I'm like, where are they going to walk to? Can I circle around? So me personally, like, I'm ambushing them.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, typically, like, the weekend before, like, you're going up high, like, this is sage country, tons of coulees, stuff like that. And there you can actually watch them bed, stuff like that. And you can get close. And actually, like, I think 2 days before I got mine, it was just like one of those, like, perfect, bedded on like a little coulee, came over. It was like 22 yards or something like that. Dropped back down. I'm like pumped up and sitting there. I'm like, oh, I'm getting this thing mounted. It was huge. I'm already thinking about the BBD tax, stuff like that. And then so I draw back, stand up, and it's just running already. And like that's when I Googled. I'm like, how did it see me? Whatever. And then like it turns out they can see like 330 degrees, pretty much a full circle. I'm like, all right, this is nuts. So antelope's hard to stalk no matter where you're at. So I found ambushing that worked better.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I've never archery hunted them, and obviously that's a lot harder. But rifle hunting them, I have done that a bunch, and I have gotten within 80 yards of a herd that was bedded, and it's like I was going down a slight decline towards them, and they're bedded on the same one. The sagebrush was like max, maybe a foot high, and cactus everywhere, and it was like you feel like just breathing in, you feel like they're going to catch that movement of your chest going. I'm sure at 10 yards, that's even more magnified. But yeah,
they're a different ball game.
I love hunting antelope.
Yeah, I've been building up points in Montana. I have way over the amount that I need to draw, but I just keep getting points for some reason. And I'd love to do it sometime. I just haven't put the time into doing it. And honestly, I have no idea. Not that I'd really care, especially for my first or second one, but I don't know what a big buck looks like versus a smaller one. To me, they all kind of look the same.
Yeah.
I know there's obviously a difference, and there's, I know an 80-inch one's a really big one.
I will tell you that every time you look at an antelope through binoculars, the first impression you're going to get is, wow, that's a big one. And then you start looking at it more like, actually, that's not that big.
Yeah.
Because there's so many little things that make them, like the difference between an 80-inch and a 75-inch is...
It's huge.
Yeah, exactly. I forget who said it. It might have been one of the Eastmans said it, that like one of them that was like obsessed with antelope hunting said the reason they like antelope so much is the difference between a Boone and Crockett and a non-Boone and Crockett is like a half an inch or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I mean, and you can't, it's so hard to be able to judge that it's, I don't know.
I'm not good at field judging. Yeah.
No.
At all.
I always think everyone's big for the first couple minutes, and then I look at it more and I'm like, all right, that's not that big.
I'm like that with all animals.
Yeah.
I'm being honest. It's like, that's a giant. And it's like, walk up to it. Well, yeah, it's a good one.
There's something to be said about like how dark their horns are, though, in that bright open landscape that just makes them look.
Pop.
Yeah, they just pop and make them look bigger.
And their hide's so cool, too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They're just a neat animal. Yeah. And where you shot yours was
Yeah, I love that spot.
it was
unreal.
super scenic.
It's like, yeah, I'd be happy never getting another antelope. That spot's so cool. And like for example, like this antelope herd's so like abnormal. Like you got your elk a mile from where I shot my antelope. Like there's times like when I'd go out scouting in the summer and stuff, I'd see antelope, moose, elk all within a couple 100 yards of each other. It's just a very unique herd.
That wasn't more than a couple 100 yards from where we had those bulls bugling right below us.
Yeah,
right?
it was like 4th of July or something.
Yeah.
Like the bulls were bugling in that area. It's just a little hidden gem.
Yeah. You should probably tell everybody where it's at.
Yeah, here's the coordinates. I'm dropping it. Yeah.
We'll sell them.
They'll have a hard time finding it up there in northeast Montana.
Yeah. Yeah. Wyoming, yeah.
Yellowstone, man.
Yeah.
It's great hunting.
They walk right up to you.
No, that's funny. I remember when Mason was talking about hunting elk and like just saying it was a really cool spot as far as like how there's antelope there. And I remember you were maybe scouting a spot, or maybe you were hunting and you were seeing antelope like in the mountains and stuff too, which is pretty cool.
I was say that's a different spot, but this year I saw an antelope like at 10.6 or 10.5, something like that, on top of a named peak. I'm sitting there like glassing, like this is like when I was scouting for mule deer and stuff. I'm looking at mule deer at 9,000 feet. I look up and I see a white dot. I'm like, oh, that's got to be the giant I haven't seen yet. I'm like, that's just a lone antelope buck bedded 10 feet off the peak of this mountain. You can see like where hikers like pile up those rocks, and it's just like bedded right next to it. I'm like, wow. I had no clue antelope did that. So
I have a spot in Colorado that has that.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how little I know about antelope. I didn't know they lived at 10,000 feet.
Well,
in Wyoming, the main spot I would hunt in Wyoming, it was plains, but it was high plains, and like you're talking 8,500 feet.
Oh wow!
And that's like, but you're flat plains and you're 8,500 feet, so they don't. And I found them on the side of the mountain up at 9.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not like above tree line stuff.
Yeah, yeah. This
still
is an alpine pronghorn. I wish I had my bow that day.
You remember in Colorado when you shot your mule deer a few years ago, and we were up super high, above 12,000 feet, and did we find a turkey feather? Or what was it that something about a turkey? I don't know if we saw. I don't think we saw it. Maybe a turkey feather, and then we talked to that taxidermist, and they were talking about seeing turkeys way up high, and so it's just like crazy.
The alpine turkeys.
The alpine turkeys.
I actually found a turkey feather in a really weird spot in Montana this year, like that.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, like in the most heavy grizzly area I've found yet out there. Like, I mean, every tree's scratched up, poop everywhere. There's turkey feathers. I'm like, beautiful Miriam's feather. I'm like, what are you doing up here? You're not going to live long. I tell you that.
No. Everything already wants to kill you in a normal area.
Yeah.
Now you're adding some ultimate apex predators to the mix on top of everything else that's trying to kill you.
Let's go make some squealing turkey noises up there in the spring, right when they're coming out of hibernation.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Gotta send me that spot.
Yeah, Tyler, you have some really bad luck. Bad luck with predators.
Yeah, animals don't like me.
Yeah.
I tried to do my favor back to him though.
Yeah.
Try to.
Well, yeah, you saw a mountain lion this year up close.
Let's back up a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
Tyler got half eaten by a bobcat
In Pennsylvania.
in Pennsylvania,
And
and I think we should mention that before we go into the rest.
That's a good
I also want to mention Mason with a gun watched it happen. So
let's hear it from your perspective.
okay, so there I was, like 14 years old, just a little squirt.
You still are.
I set myself up for that one. But yeah, I mean, it was like still dark out, essentially. We have this turkey roost at 100 yards, perfect setup. Mason's calling for me. So Mason's calling. I'm like 50 yards in front of him, turkey 100 yards in front of me. It's like just getting that twilight where you can see 10 feet. You can almost see the silhouette of the turkey. He starts clucking or whatever, getting that turkey going. And then like this is like one of those weird slow motion like videos like in your life. I just remember like, don't know why, I slowly turned my head and like just midair, just bobcat like coming. And like I'm like I couldn't do anything. Just next thing I know, it's just on my head, just clawing and biting me.
The best part, that's probably my favorite part of the story. I love. Didn't you make him continue hunting for a little
Yeah.
while?
No,
Yeah.
no, go back to
So
Mason.
Mason can pick up from there.
Yeah,
because
let's
he
see
tells
Mason's
him.
view in perspective from behind.
So I seen a flash of something. I thought I was going to run between us. I was like, whatever. I thought it was a bear or a coyote. I was like, whatever this is going to scare my brother and it's going to be funny. So
Thanks.
I see this flash coming, and all of a sudden Tyler gets knocked over.
It hit me hard.
And I see a bobcat standing on his head, just looking down at him. And I'm like, this is my only opportunity to ever pepper my brother. I was like,
Justify it.
Yeah.
but I didn't. Obviously, I didn't shoot because I didn't want to shoot my brother. so then I go, and he's just in the fetal position, is standing on his head. And
Threw it off,
so I get up
eventually.
and I yell, and it goes running off. And then I was like, I can go to my brother, or I can chase after this bobcat.
Or we
So-
can get that turkey still.
yeah. And actually, the turkey was on the ground. I kept waiting for him to shoot. It was like right there. Mm-hmm. And it jumped on you because you were moving too much.
Oh, yeah. Let me just throw that jab in there.
But anyways, the bobcat ran off, and I'm thinking, I chased after it for a second just to make sure it was gone, and then I go back to Tyler, and I'm afraid to look at him. I'm thinking like he's going to be missing an eyeball or something, and he's still in the fetal position.
It's pretty
And
scary.
I was like, I'm thinking like, dude, it was gone a minute ago. You can come out of the fetal position. so I grab his arm and I start I'm like, all right, I gotta look at his face, make sure he has both his eyes, and I roll him over and he just goes, it smelled so bad.
Yeah.
And then the turkey started gobbling again,
Yeah.
and we made. You wanted to go home. I said, no, it's gobbling. Let's
I
go.
mean, there's blood running down my neck here. It's like a turkey's still hot. Like I have rabies probably here.
Well, yeah, because you had a gash in your head.
Yeah, I
though,
still have
right?
a pretty sweet scar here. And then, yeah, I mean, there's still tooth mark holes. I don't like that one.
Yeah,
Those scars
you
are
had a
cool.
puncture in like your eyebrow or something too.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, they tore me up at the hospital. Yeah, that's the other thing. I got tricked in the hospital, but
What do you mean?
I mean, I thought I was good. I'm like, I deserve to get attacked. It doesn't have rabies, but no, we had to go and do the whole rabies shots, scrub my wounds, stuff like that. But
Well, yeah, I remember you had a head net on that was like all
Oh,
ripped
yeah.
up and just like
You still have the head net?
it's somewhere in our house.
You
Yeah,
should frame it.
yeah, and did you may have just said it and I missed it, but did you kick the bobcat or something to get it
No,
off?
I just ran after it and yelled, and it took off.
Okay, well, I'm glad you told the story because if I would have told it, I thought you like were punching it and kicking it. But,
yeah.
I think that's how when I tell the story from here on, it's gonna
Yeah.
be that way.
yeah.
Mason-
Oh yeah, you got
Sounds better.
Mason had to kick it off him.
Yeah,
It was pruning him like a
because
little
honestly,
house cat.
it's just not a good look on Mason to not have done that. You know.
Yeah,
I would have tried.
Yeah, that was that was funny. Well, not really funny, but that
Oh,
was
it
like
was.
that was
It was pretty funny.
cool.
that was kind of the start. And I'm kind of changing the direction of this podcast a little bit, but this is funny. But like the direction of Tyler's
Yeah.
encounters with dangerous game.
Yeah.
So then I don't think you had anything more in PA. But then once you moved to Montana,
I had a
then,
bald eagle, but that's
you had a bald eagle.
yeah. Me and Mason used to be big into trap and stuff like that, and I mean, I was this was before the bobcat, I think, and so I was like 10. Everything's big when you're 10.
Mm-hmm.
And there was just an eagle like in a tree like at 10 feet above me or whatever, and it swooped down at me. But I'm saying, like, when I'm like 5 foot and the eagle's wingspan's 8 foot, and
It probably could have picked you up.
yeah, I was saying. Well, that's another random story, but South Dakota, we watched an eagle like attacking some deer.
Yeah.
That was a golden eagle, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those things are
But
giant.
yeah, so eagles don't like bobcats, wolves, mountain lions so far. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah. So then was the next one the wolf? No, I think that the next one that was funny is when you shot your black bear in the spring
Oh,
last year. Or yeah, well, I guess 2 years ago now because it's 2024 when we're recording this. But when you shot a black bear in heavy grizzly country, and you were so afraid of, like, because you were by yourself.
yeah.
So you packed out the entire bear, all the meat and the hide and rug, all by yourself.
Yeah. That was a bad one. Yeah. And I shot it like right at 10 p.m. because this is like June. So not 10 p.m., but
Late.
last light.
Yeah.
And then I remember, like, I think I loaded up my backpack. It was like midnight, but the whole time, I mean, I'm next to a river, so you can't hear. Every time I pick my head up, I'm seeing, like, eyes. I hope they were deer, but yeah, I'm just playing DMX as loud as it can go on my phone. Phone dies. And then, yeah, so I get back to that truck, like, at 1 a.m. That was, like, a terrible night. Yeah, and so a 100-pound backpack and all alone, no service,
Probably more
no
than
phone.
100 pounds.
It was heavy.
Yeah.
I had some adrenaline going for, like, 4 hours, though. That was scary country.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the next one was the wolf encounter, right?
Yeah, so this year spring bear hunting. Yeah, so do you want me to dive into
Yeah,
that?
dive
one?
into it.
So like exactly where I shot like my bear 2 years ago now, then like I just call that like the predator zone. Like it's so spooky. I think I took Mason there elk hunting one night. It's just like it's a place you just don't want to go. Like it's just got that weird vibe for it and stuff like that.
It is a weird forest, that area.
Yeah. So then like I'm walking, I'm like, oh, I haven't gone back here because I told myself I'm never set foot here again. And I'm like looking over, like trying to find my bear carcass from last year. And then, so it's like 10 a.m. Like I'm just out more scouting. Like I wonder if there's still bears in here, stuff like that. And 10 a.m., sun out, 60-degree day. The wolves just light up. It's like I already knew there was like wolves there. And they light up like 400 or 500 yards away on the ridge above me. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And they kept doing it. And I think I ended up taking like videos, sending it to you guys.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep with my plan walking up this drainage. Like a half hour goes by, I make it like another mile and a half up there. And they howl again, like perfectly above me. I'm like, okay, that's a weird coincidence. Okay, I'm going to backtrack and head up this other drainage. So now there's going to be a big mountain dividing like where we were. So I backtrack, go up there, don't hear anything for like 2 hours. And then I hear the wolves again. Same elevation and on my back trail now. I'm like, son of a gun. And because here's the thing, my family always yells at me for this. I only carry 3 bullets, 3 in the gun. I don't think I had my pistol that day. And so here I am in grizzly and wolf country. I know I'm going into there and I bring 3 bullets. And I'm like, well, I can't turn around now. They're behind me. It's like 1 p.m. I don't know why they're still howling. Like, I'm afraid to even think. I'm like, are they after me? So then I go like another like 2 miles. And now they're like 100 yards away howling to like my left. I'm like, I'm out. I just immediately turned around and pretty much jogged the whole way back. And I'm seeing their tracks, their poop like on my trail and stuff like that. And yeah, I pretty much jogged the whole way back to the truck that day.
Luckily, your stride might be one of the only people in the world that could outrun a wolf or outwalk one at least.
I felt good about it though, at least.
And he always has close encounters with predators and is in sketchy situations, but that one really rattled you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think for 3 hours, like my arm hair was just standing up, like there was a breeze, and it's like one of those like it hits you and like you just it hurts. Like that one was probably the scariest, honestly.
Yeah, I could imagine. And I remember the worst part for all of us was you had cell service and you were sending Snapchat of like live by live what was happening. And I'm like, all right, I haven't had an update from Tyler in like an hour. Like, is he taken down?
Yeah. He got smoked.
Yeah. It was cool the first 2 times, and then I was like, oh shit.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty wild. And then was it in the fall when you had the encounter with the mountain lion?
Yeah, so that was opening Labor Day weekend then. Yeah, it was just I can dive into that one real quick then too. So I was just camped like on a knife ridge. I mean, this ridge is 5 yards wide. I was probably being lazy because I didn't want to climb 2,000 feet every day. So I put my tent on this knife ridge, not thinking I'm like, any animal cruising is going to walk within 5 feet of my tent. It's grizz country again. So, I mean, it was like 8 p.m., like it's dark or whatever. So I'm like, I don't want to cook at my camp. So left the gun, left the bow, left the bear spray. And I'm like, oh, it's dark. I'm just going to walk over here and cook my food 200 yards away. And I'm sitting there cooking, like listening to bulls, bugles, sitting there like enjoying life. I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. And then it was just like one of those like sixth sense again. It's like, let me just randomly turn around for no reason. And I just see this like animal like crawling. And I'm like, my first thought was like, there's a wolf and I don't have a weapon to like get this wolf. I was like disappointed. And then all of a sudden I see like the long tail. I'm like, son of a gun. And then it just kept walking, like stalking. And I'm like, son of a gun. And so I stand up. And then, like, yeah, now I know it's a mountain lion. It's like at 50 yards. And then when I stand up, it kind of stops. And I'm like, well, I got 200 yards to the tent, 50 yards from a mountain lion. One of those is like, well, what do I do? I start yelling at it. And then it just sits down and looks at me. I'm like, oh.
He is not scared of me.
Yeah.
That plan failed.
So then I yelled a couple more times. And then I'm sitting there. I'm like, I got to make a run for it, right? Probably not the smartest. Yelled one more time, just sat there, just perched up, looking at me. Took off running, never looked back.
You ran.
Oh, yeah, I ran for my life, and it was uphill too. So I was like, I wasn't fast. So I get to my camp, grab my pistol, turn around, and I just see it just walking off. Like, what's this this kid doing? And then I'm like, oh, great, like, and now I'm not gonna sleep tonight or whatever. And then to make things worse, so I ended up running into two guys that night, or like that evening, like right before I was heading back to my camp. They're like, oh, we're going to go after these elk right below your camp. I'm like, yeah, like I can't go after them. Go ahead. So I get to my tent or whatever, and pistol's like on my chest. I'm like, this is going to be a long night. And then I get a message from these guys like, hey, we just shot a bull below your camp and a grizzly stole our meat. And this is like 500 yards away. I think this is where they got it. I'm like, no, I'm really not going to be able to sleep. It's a long night. I think it was like 7:05. I'm like, it's bright enough. Packed up camp, ran off that mountain. So
I didn't realize the mountain lion encounter was at night. So you saw it with your headlamp?
I mean, it was like one of those twilight things. Like, it's 50 yards, and I think it's a wolf. And then it kept getting closer and closer, and I'm like, then I see the tail. I'm like, it's like one of those. Like, yeah, it's just bright enough. I mean, I had a headlamp, but
yeah. So what did you learn from these experiences?
Unfortunately, I don't think anything.
I meant like maybe take your gun with you.
Oh, okay, yeah, that one. But yeah, I think after that one, I bring 6 bullets now.
Okay.
And then bear spray never leaves my vinyl harness now.
That's good.
Because before in rifle season, I'm like, I don't need the bear spray anymore. But yeah, bear spray doesn't leave my vinyl harness now.
No, that's
I did learn some stuff.
Yeah.
6 bullets, bear spray. Probably more bullets, but
yeah, it doesn't matter how many weapons you have if you don't have them in usable space.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yep.
Yeah, that's yeah, and you wonder why like the whole family's worried about you hunting by yourself.
I know. Yeah.
It's like Tyler's out there by himself again. Like, who knows what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
Sleeping in grizzly country.
Yep. 3 bullets. Yep.
That's comical because like again I just got like a little bit of messages from you and then a little bit relayed from Mason, but hearing it from your mouth that you ran, I didn't know that part of it. That is absolutely hilarious.
I think what makes it funnier is we've all seen him run before.
It's not pretty.
To some extent.
It's pretty goony looking.
He's like a gazelle, but goonier.
Yeah. And slow.
So basically, your walk is extremely fast, but your run's not much faster.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's why I don't run.
Oh, man, that's hilarious. But kind of transitioning from the animal attacks, the next trip was you, Mason, or the next success, I guess, trip. Tyler was hunting throughout this whole time, but Mason, you went to Colorado on a solo trip hunting mule deer.
Yeah, so I actually, the mountain lion attack or stalk on him was the same day as I shot my mule deer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that one.
Because I remember laying in the hotel bed.
Yeah, hotel.
Talking to you. But yeah, I drew. I was in an awkward spot this year where I was really banking on drawing a Montana tag to go back and hunt with Tyler. And I didn't end up drawing the general tag, so and I had an awkward amount of points for everywhere else, so I ended up getting just a kind of a not so good unit in Montana for high country.
Colorado.
Colorado for high country mule deer, and But I was like, I'm going to make the best of it. So I went there, and I went 3 days early to do some scouting because I've never set foot in this unit. And for 3 days, all I seen was a spike until last light the day before the opener. And I found this big droptine buck, and it was in a spot that was, you wouldn't necessarily expect a big buck to be, right? So it was close to a campground, and then it was kind of a flatter area, so it's not really great for glassing. And there's a lake on the other side of this maybe mile wide patch of trees of like thick timber, right? So it was like, and this whole campground, I've never seen. There's only one road into this unit, and the day before the opener, I talked to one campsite that was just right down the road from where I kind of made my base station, and they said they counted over 60 rigs the day before the opener coming in there, hunting rigs. So it's like, man, this is. And then that night I found that buck, and I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, 60 people drove past me, and there's not that much further to go in the unit, right? So it's like, there's a buttload of hunters all around where this buck's living. And where I seen him is like, it's like the one spot is like, it's a fairly visible place. So I seen him right at last light, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is an incredible buck, and it's in a horrible spot because everybody else is close by. So that night I just laid awake in my tent all night, just scheming about how, kind of selfishly, how can I make sure I get this buck and nobody else does, right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't sleep one wink, and there's coyotes around me howling all night, so there's not a chance of even sleeping. So finally it's like 4 a.m. and it's a full moon. That night it was a really bright full moon, and I can like see outside my tent like with just moonlight, and I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start hitting any little high spot I can find and glassing close to the roads to make sure he's not out by the roads. That way I can scare him in the timber before everybody gets up and starts hunting. So I get up in my high spots. I'm glassing just the moonlight, and I can see, I'd be able to see him. And I'm hitting all the high spots. I don't see him out anywhere. Then I wait for first light, and I drive down all the roads close to where he was living, just to make sure he's not, right before first light, to make sure he's not out. And I didn't see him anywhere. And I hiked through the timber that morning, just still hunting really slow. And I ran into, I just felt like I was being really sneaky. Like I was on my game that morning. And I'm sneaking through there and walking past does and a little buck. And I get right to the section where, and I had like 8 hours that night to look at maps. And it's not that big of an area to try and figure out where he's living at. And right before I get to the area where I figured I was going to, I'm getting in his zone, the wind switched and started blowing in there. I was like, well, I'm not going to screw it up now. I think I have a really good plan for the afternoon. I'm just going to back out, right? So then there's this small lake. It's like, I'll just go fish that lake to pass some time. This is like maybe 8 o'clock in the morning now. And as I'm driving down to that lake, I look at this high spot, or not really a peak, but a pretty high rolling, not rolling mountain, but it's kind of a mid-sized mountain in the other unit. I was like, I might be able to go up there and glass back and see if I can see him in that spot where I think he's living. And where he's living is like pretty much thick timber. It's really thick timber, and there's some willows right below the timber in this little stream. So I was like, I got to give myself a chance. So I climbed up that other mountain anyways in the other unit, and as soon as I get up there and like one of 2 or 3 openings in that whole mountainside back in my unit, he's standing right in the middle of it. I'm like, this is unbelievable. And it's not like he's just hanging out in it. He's walking through, and the wind's at his back. I'm like, I couldn't get any luckier to time this just right. So I come scurrying back out of that unit, back into mine. I drop my pack, and I left my bow at my truck because
you don't want to get mistaken for being in the wrong unit.
Yeah, I didn't have a tag for that unit. So I get my bow out of my truck, and I scurry over to the side of the mountain that he's on, and just start still hunting my way into him. And eventually I get to a spot where I see him, and he's in range, and it's just a wall of sticks between us. I'm like, and he has no idea I'm there, and the wind's staying pretty decent. And I'm like, I just got to take a breather here and see how this plays out. I'm like, if he goes up the hill, I can maybe get a shot at like 30, and otherwise he's going to keep feeding towards me, and he's going to come out to like 4 yards, and he's probably going to spook before I get a shot, right? But I was like, I don't have any other options. I'm too close to make a move, and too far or too much brush to get a shot anyway, so I'm stuck there. Then he starts feeding up the hill. I'm like, oh, perfect. And then he sticks his head up like he smells me, but I think he's just like a wary old buck, just being cautious. And I'm panicking. I'm like trying to move around, trying to find even the smallest hole through the branches, and I can't find one. Then luckily he goes back to feeding, so I don't think he smelled me. But then he's feeding up. It's like he has to go like 5 more yards, and I'll have a beautiful shot at like 25. And right before he gets his head in that opening, then he turns and starts feeding straight away. I'm like, shit. So I'm moving on my knees a little bit, and finally I find a hole. It's like a softball-sized hole. And I pull back, and I start settling my pin, and I start pushing and pulling my bow apart to execute my shot. And I just start shaking way too bad. And my pin's my pin's doing nothing but touching branches. And I'm like, this is just not going to work. So I let down, and I moved a little bit. And he kind of gave me a little bit better angle, and I pulled back again. And this time it's a smaller hole. Now it's like a baseball-sized hole. And it's halfway between him and I. But this time it's like I'm feeling more solid, right? I'm feeling real good. And I just execute my shot, and the shot sounded great, and he peeled out of there like as fast as a deer can run. Like, this seems pretty good, but, I don't want to get my confidence up too high because I didn't see the arrow hit him. I don't really know what happened. So I take a breather. I check the time. I was like, I'm not going to do anything for 20 minutes. So I kind of just hang out there. And, time's going as slow as time can go.
Yeah.
So finally, after like 15 minutes, I was like, I'll just sneak up there and look at my arrow. And I'm still not 100% sure that I hit him, but it sounded like I did. And I walk up there and I find my arrow, and it's just coated in blood. I'm like, okay, this is good. And I look at the trail that he ran on. I can see blood just spilling out, all tons of blood. So I'm like, okay, this is really good, but I'm still not getting my hopes up. And so then I was like, I just got to get out of here. So I walked back to my truck. I gave him a little more time. Went back in, and he only went like another 50 yards from where I shot him, and he's piled up there.
You guys remember that picture you sent too? The teaser pic? I don't know if I can talk about that.
Yeah, you can talk. What did it say?
I think it said teaser pic or something like that.
Yeah, it said BBD teaser pic, and it was just a picture of the buck's nuts.
But the night before, I think I had everybody on edge a little bit that I found I found a big droptine buck.
Yeah, you did. Exactly.
Well, because I talked to you the night before, which is like after day 2 of... Not the day before the season, the night before you found him. It was like day 2 of scouting in there. You're, by yourself, drove all the way to Colorado. You're out there. And I just felt like this wasn't Mason I was talking to. He was kind of negative, kind of down.
Kind of talking him off the ledge.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just kind of like, man, this kind of sucks, like going through. I should have saved up my vacation, for South Dakota and deer hunting, and just said, you know what, I'm not hunting, high country mule deer this year. And like you were in, kind of a tough spot, and but you just, you kept after it. And then the next night when I don't know if you called me or texted me, whatever it was, but I was like, whole different Mason. It was like, here we go, like it's time,
And I will say that like his excitement didn't die off for like a week, because he was at my house 2-3 days after the fact.
Yeah.
And we had a beer on the back porch, and he was still just jacked. I mean, he was just riding cloud 9, because obviously it's
a stud.
Yeah,
stud. I mean, huge mule deer, older buck, big drop tine, in a place that they're not really supposed to. I mean, Colorado, you can find a big deer in any unit really, but that heavily hunted, that close to the roads, like that is pretty awesome. Like just 1 in a million type deal to be able to find deer like that. And
I don't think it's 1 in a million. I think just not enough people look.
Yeah. I mean, maybe,
to be honest, because I mean, like,
it's not a coincidence.
How many people would have been in his position and not even glassed near the road?
That's very true.
That's true. For the 3 days before that, I had some master vantage points where I could see some amazing country where I felt like deer should have been and seen none. right?
Yeah.
So you just happen to live in a really weird spot. Maybe it's overlooked. I don't know, but I was lucky to find him and lucky to get him for sure.
I don't think it was luck.
3 opening day velvet high country deers for you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
It's not coincidence. Yeah.
Yeah, and and we talked about it probably a few years ago in the podcast, but your first Mason, looks like now like he's had all this success and he's been, killing deer. It seems like whitetails or mule deer wherever he goes, but the years leading up to that wasn't the case. There was a lot of, what they call you at work? No meat Mason.
Yeah.
You go on these big trips and not come back with anything. But it took that. I feel like that was like your learning phase, and then once it clicked, it was like, all right, you start learning these tendencies to be able to do it, and that I think that happens for anybody if they don't give up and you start learning some things about it. But
I think it took all of us 3 to 5 years to start being successful out there.
Yeah.
My first year in Montana was a wash, pretty much. So much trial and error.
I remember that deer I shot with you in Utah. That opening day.
Mm-hmm.
It was like when I shot that deer, I was pretty tore up. I was like, because like you said, you try for so long, and then to the point it doesn't even feel like it's possible, right? So then, I put a good shot on one and watched it roll off some cliffs, and it was like, holy cow, this is actually doable. And then after that, you have some confidence and
you get that confidence, but I still think every time you go into the season in your head, you're just like, it's impossible. Why do I think I can do this?
What am I doing?
Yeah, I agree with that. Every year I look at my arrows and it's like, how's this little 1-inch broadhead going to kill a deer? But it does.
Yeah, no, and it's it was the same way with me with elk. Was for the first 3 years I was just trying to find an opportunity to even find elk, just trying, and then once it happened it was like, that's awesome. And then 2022 last time I hunted elk, then after that it was like, I was in a different area, a better area, but I was finding elk and having these encounters. Now it was at the point, my next step of the learning was like what to do to actually
get
kill
in
them,
range,
in range. If things aren't always, the one I killed in Idaho, everything worked out perfect, but that's not normally the case. It's like you got this first stage of just trying to find the animals, and then the next stage is how to actually kill them, and that's hard to be able to capitalize on that portion of it. To be able to do that. And I think, you've had a lot of practice now up to this point. And Tyler, you've gained a lot of experience in a couple of years. You hunted out west before that. You went to Colorado and was able to find them and stuff. But by the amount of hunting you've been able to do in the last 2 years, you've kind of expedited that learning curve quite a bit. You were able to screw up a lot of times in a short, in one season, and I don't mean that in any negative way.
2021 was bad.
Where someone that was going out for 5 to 7 days, that might be 5 years of those screw ups that you were able to do in a shorter period, which is good because then this year it felt like you were just on it, and things were working out, and that's just kind of the nature of learning to do something new.
More time you spend in there, the quicker you learn.
Yeah.
Yep.
Most definitely. And then I guess after that, then it was like kind of whirlwind. I was going on my moose hunt a couple days later, and then, which I already told the story about that, so I won't talk about it. But Kurt, you had drawn a ewe sheep tag in Colorado.
Yep.
And so kind of tell why you decided that you wanted to put in for a ewe sheep tag, because it's not typical that people want to put in for a female tag.
I honestly, it was kind of a last minute decision because I was just like getting real down. All I want to do is hunt sheep, and I look at the odds and I'm like, this is realistically, because I'm not doing archery, you're like 30, 40 years, to put in for this. And I'm like, I don't even know if I like it. Like, I don't want to put in for 40 years and then do it and be like, that was stupid. Like, why did I just waste all this time and money? So I was like, I'm just going to put in for a U tag this year. And I remember sitting at my computer the day the email came through. It said, hey, somebody turned in their tag and you were the next in line. You drew the limited tag for this unit, whatever. And I'm like, I literally I almost deleted the email because I was like, well, it's just from this random guy. I thought it was one of the Colorado Parks and Wildlife weekly emails they send out, and I almost deleted it. And I looked at it and I'm like, I just like literally like my heart just started beating 100 miles an hour. My stomach dropped, and I picked up my phone and I called. I think I called you. I either called you or Chris Toomey. Is one of the two, like back to back, and I was like, I just drew a sheep tag. He's like, what? Because like that, it involves so much. It's much more than just like, I don't know. But yeah, so I was like, I want to make sure I know that I like this, and if I want to invest time in this, especially if I want to do like a Dall sheep hunt, there's a lot of money. If I want to save up for that, I want to make sure I'm going to like it. So I was like, I'll put in for that. And to be honest, when I drew the tag, I kind of forgot that I decided to do that. So when that came through, I was just like looking to see what unit I actually applied for and all that. Yeah. But and then where I was, it was a unit I was very familiar with because I had hunted ptarmigan when I lived in Colorado in that unit. So I knew that unit well. I knew physically I would be able to get to those places that they would be at, which was that's usually a huge challenge with sheep hunting. You know, I knew I couldn't do it in the shape I was in at the time, but I knew I could get there.
Yeah, could park my car.
Yeah, but I don't know. So then that just set on this whole process, and it was one of those hunts too where I think it was as exciting researching it as it was doing the hunt itself, because I don't know anybody that's ever hunted them, like close family wise, anyways. So it just like learning behavior of sheep. They're not anything like deer. So I was buying books, biology books from the 70s and just researching stuff. And the other thing is all the sheep hunting books are about hunting rams, and rams and ewes are different. Like they have different behavior patterns.
I know for like those 6 months leading up to your hunt, it was like every time you're hanging out with Kurt, you're learning all these facts about sheep.
Yeah. I was just completely involved in it. And if you ever go down this path, sheep hunting books are expensive. And it wasn't even just sheep hunting books, just sheep biology books. They're a lot of money in it, but it was worth it because I went into it very confident, like and I was lucky enough that on Spartan Forge, I had UAV imagery of that area.
Okay.
So I had like super detailed of those mountaintops and all that stuff. And, but yeah, anyway, so leading up to it was just did a lot of running, kettlebell workouts, stuff like that. But, we went out a week prior to the actual season starting. It was a week prior. So I work remote, and I was working out of a cabin at 8,500 feet so that I could start getting used to that altitude because they're going to be up high. Work all day, and since I work on East Coast time, I was done at like 3, or actually 2. I'd wake up early in the morning, be done at 2, and me and my father-in-law went with me. We'd hike up to different spots, glass for the last hours of light. It was a little disheartening, to be honest. All I was finding was rams. And it's like, usually I feel like it'd be the opposite because there's a lot more ewes than there are rams. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Because at that point in the year, ewes and rams aren't together. They're in separate bands. Like you'll find groups of 4 or 5 to 6 rams in an area, and then the ewes will be in herds of 20 to 30 in different areas. Yeah. But so anyways, took the time to start adjusting to altitude and everything like that. Finally, it was 2 days prior to the season, we backpacked in to an area where we had finally turned up some ewes, and changed camp a couple times, watched them, and they were kind of hanging out in the same area, same part of the mountain. But I remember the first morning that we had slept back there glassing, and it's literally on the highest peak. Like, all of them are just standing on the highest peak that you can see. And I'm just like, of course, like, that's where they would be, is literally as far away as possible as I can get from them right now. But we did it right. We kind of camped up high again. So, like, adjusting to altitude, we did 4 or 5 days at 8,500 feet, then camped at 10.5. Then my last camp was at 11.7, 11.8.
And your hunting partner's a pretty hardcore guy, too.
Yeah, so Gary, my father-in-law, he just got done running a 100-mile race in the crazy mountains of Montana. And just like, he's...
Beast.
Yeah, a beast. So he's never done a backpack hunt before, so he'd done backpacking before, but that was new to him, doing that kind of thing. But he was just as pumped about it as I am, because he loves being above tree line. But anyways, scouting all that, we were turning them up. Felt like we had a solid plan. Opening morning comes. We didn't spot them yet, but we're like, okay, this is where we're heading. Glassing for a while, wasn't seeing them. Sure enough, they come out of this one little saddle. And this saddle, they were basically bedding in this bowl that was high up there. That saddle was at 13.2. So, like, they're crossing through that, and I'm like, all right, well, we got to go up there. I get to a point where I think I'm going to be able to cross and get to them, and they are, it's completely cliffed out the whole way to get over there. So they just went over this ridge that's 300 yards away, and I have no way to get to that ridge unless I go all the way to the top and then down the same saddle that they were at. So that's what we did. But one of the things about that hunt at this point is it was kind of like how you wish every hunt would go, and there was just no pressure. Like, didn't see any hunters. It's like kind of how you wish every hunt is. You're observing the animal in their natural habitat, not pressured by people. You got to account for that somehow, but you wish that you didn't. I think everybody wishes they did.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So anyways, we climbed up to 13.2, and it was just like, epic. It's probably 20 degrees. The wind's blowing. We're on top of this big bowl, and it's a very prominent bowl that I've seen hundreds of times when I lived out there. So it's like, it's nice now that I know going there, I can always look at that bowl and be like, that's where I killed my sheep. But anyways, cut down over, and again, having a good hunting partner like Gary, we just, he's one of those people that I can be like, hey, can you stay back here? I'm going to go peek over, see if they're here. And, like, I don't have to worry about him, like, coming to check on me, see if I'm all right,
wandering.
Wandering or anything like that. And he, first time I checked, couldn't find him. So I was like, I went back, got my pack, went a little further. I was like, all right, I know they're in this valley. They're somewhere. So I peek over, and I see, he's probably 100 yards behind me at this point. I see a little yearling ram. And that's the hard part about ewe hunting, is yearling rams hang out with ewes, and they look like the biggest ewe in the group. So when you want to shoot the biggest ewe, it's probably your yearling ram. And if you do that, you're going to get fined and lose your sheep and all that. So you got to be very, very careful. And one of the ways you got to do this is you got to wait for them to pee. But I was able to, I studied enough and watched it enough that I was like, immediately, that's a yearling ram. But I knew from the few days watching that herd the days before that the ewes were with him somewhere. So anyways, he was at 90 yards at that point. He fed over the edge. So then I started scooting down the mountain more. And at this point, I've left Gary for, I think, 2 hours. And that's, again, where you have a good hunting partner that's just trusting you and being like, yeah, I'm just going to sit here and watch until he tells me. We don't have cell service or anything like that, but he knows that I'm not going to leave him up there for a week. It's started going down, and pretty soon I see that that yearling ram pop up 75 yards to my left. And I'm just like, shit, like they got me. I'm watching a ewe pops up. I pull up. She's at 110 yards, but it was a young ewe. And I forget what it was. It's either 5 or 6 inches, the minimum for the horn size for ewes. It was over that, but I knew there's bigger ewes in the group. So I was like, I'm not worried about that. But I'm like, how did they get up there? So they must have been watching me the whole time. But anyways, I waited, and all of a sudden I started hearing rocks move down below me, and the whole herd popped up. I think it was 80 yards. Then I had the challenge of waiting for the one that I decided to shoot, one, identifying it was a female, and two, getting it clear of the rest of the herd so that when my bullet went through it, it wasn't going to hit the next one. And finally it happened. I got a good shot. Shot it. It started rolling down the mountain. I'm like, here we go. Because then when I was on some very steep country, and it starts rolling. Before it could pick up too much speed, though, it hit a sheep bed. And that little ewe horn, I think it measured like 9 5/8 or something like that, caught on the bed and hung it there. So it's like, God, I'm just shaking. And then like I sit back and I'm like, I have the most epic view of
top of the world.
Colorado. Yeah, you're at the top of the world. Colorado Rockies, just amazing.
And your pictures of that place were just incredible,
breathtaking.
Yeah, I couldn't explain being there. I was just like, I don't know. I felt so happy. Like everywhere I was going, I was just, even though I'm dying because of the altitude and everything, I'm just smile ear to ear. Just loved it there.
And what's funny is like the pictures that you took with that ewe on the side of that mountain face, it looked steep in photos, which means it must have been really, really, really steep. Because like you take a photo, you're like, man, I'm in a really badass spot. And then you take a picture and it looks like a little hill.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, what? It's like, this is like I can barely stand on it. And your pictures look steep like that. So I mean, you were up there.
It definitely doesn't. The pictures didn't do it justice how steep it was.
Oh, I can imagine.
I mean, once we so the funny thing about that then was getting a hold of Gary, right? So Gary didn't hear my shot either. Somehow in the canyon or something funneled that sound down to where he didn't hear it. So it's like I sent him a text, but he didn't get it at first. So I'm just sitting there and just kind of like, I mean, I would have to climb. I dropped where I shot it at like 12.6. So I dropped 800 feet to get on that stalk to get him, and 800 feet, and if you look at a map, a couple hundred yards.
Yeah.
So it's very steep. But eventually, I guess the text went through, and I see him coming down the mountain. I just sent him a text, hey, can you bring my pack down too? Because my pack was way up there with him. And seems pretty soon I see him coming down the mountain.
Did you guys have in reaches, or did you have a little bit of
I had an in reach, but he didn't.
Okay.
I think he had service at the top. Maybe I didn't at first. I can't remember. The unit actually had pretty good cell service for what you would think. But and actually, you know, actually what it was is Gary just wasn't checking his phone.
Yeah.
If you know Gary, you'd be like, yep.
Makes sense.
He just wasn't checking his phone. He's like, I picked up my phone to just, I think he's going to take a picture, and he saw he had a text from me.
It's like, oh, he got one.
And I don't even think, I thought he heard the shot, but he didn't. So I think my text just said, I can't remember exactly. I think my text just said, can you bring my pack down? But anyways, I see him come down, and I'm hooting and waving my hat and everything, and finally he caught me and came over. But we rolled that sheep up into the bed so we could process it, and the whole time, since there wasn't enough room to stand where the sheep was to process it, you're on that like shale rock slide stuff, and I mean, as I'm skinning it, you're like on a stair stepper on the slowest speed because your foot's sliding, and the next you take a step up, and you're just like doing that for.
I was surprised about how big you said that animal was too. Like,
yeah,
I didn't know that a ewe sheep would be that as big as it was, and it looked stout in your pictures.
Yeah, it had a nice sized body on it. I mean, it was probably the size of I'd say a young buck whitetail and like a mature mule deer doe wise. But
yeah,
it had a lot of meat on it for what it was.
I remember seeing a bighorn ram up really close in New Mexico, and I was like, holy cow, this thing is scary. It's like a bodybuilder version of a deer.
Yeah.
They're just
The rams
solid.
go like 300 plus pounds.
Yeah. They're solid animals.
But yeah, so we loaded it up, packed it out. Altitude hit us hard on the pack out. I mean, we both had pounding headaches. We ran out of water on the pack out. Luckily, found a little spring seep coming out of the mountain. We sat down and filtered some water and took a little break, and it was getting warm at that point too, September in Colorado. Went back to camp, cooked some tenderloins over the fire, hung out for the night. But yeah, it was, I don't know, I'm hooked now. I'm just like, that's all I want to do.
That's an expensive hobby.
It is. It is. That's all I want to do. I'm just like, yeah.
Well, I get it. When you gave me your Jack O'Connor book to take up to Alaska, and I'm reading those stories about the sheep hunting back then and stuff, I was like, I can see how someone could get super.
Yeah, it's
prettiest spot you can hunt.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing too about that hunt. Just like, yeah, it's a ewe. I don't have the bighorn sheep. And it actually does make a pretty cool Euro mount, but I don't have the big full curl mount, in the house. But I got to experience camping at almost 12,000 feet. I got to see rams on the side of the mountain, all that. So I mean, like, most of the puzzle pieces are there for. The only
thing you didn't get is
the trophy at the end.
The big trophy at the end. All you got is a skull that looks like a little devil.
It looks like a devil, yeah.
It's pretty spooky looking.
A Euro mount of a ewe sheep is kind of freaky looking. Like, it's cool, but it's kind of creepy.
Put it in basement.
Well, it is cool though that the females have horns.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
it's
nice.
Yeah. It's
it's
not like you're going to shoot a mule deer doe somewhere.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, I drew a mule deer doe tag. I'm like, oh, that's cool to go, to do that. But that's.
And now I have some of the rarest meat in North America in my freezer, and it's phenomenal.
Oh yeah, it was good. We had some last night. You and Abby cooked up that stuff. Well, I didn't have any of that because I couldn't have it, but you made it for New Year's Eve. because New Year's Day was we were recording this, but at Johnny's camp. So you had made some stuff, but I had some at your house the other day when I stopped to pick up a gun, and man, and I've had it when you took it up to our camp too during deer season. And it's pretty dang good.
But yeah, that's it's kind of changed my whole. Now all I want to do is hunt above tree line for everything. I don't want to do anything else.
Yeah.
You have to buy yourself a bow and start mule deer hunting.
I'm a firm believer. Like, I'd rather hunt small animals, ewes, anything like that, as long as the country.
Yeah,
I care more about like the location where they're at.
100%.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I would like to have a big ram on my walls.
Yeah, big old
But
breaks ram.
I have
200.
debated trying for that U tag again and just doing that over and over again because it was that much fun.
Tyler, you want to move your mic a little bit closer?
Sorry.
No, you're good. You just move it out of the way when you drink something. Perfect. But yeah, that hunt just looks so cool to be able to do. But I do think that I think you need to get a bow and open up some opportunities there.
I can see you with a long bow.
I'll give you a bow.
I want
fully set up, ready to rip.
If I do a bow, I'll probably do a long bow.
Oh, you ain't killing anything.
That might not be the case, but
I think he's afraid of success.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a flintlock. They're fun. You get to have all the fun without like processing the animal, getting it out of the woods. That's why I love flintlock hunting.
I don't know.
Recurve
I
would be
like
the
to
same
be
thing.
successful,
Well, you will.
but I don't know. We'll see. Got enough points building up everywhere. I can start doing some good hunts with the rifle.
Well, and then after that, we had went to the three of us here, Tyler, Mason, and myself. We did a big family trip to South Dakota, which was really fun to be able to do, to have our dads there and Uncle Mike and everything, and go set up wall tents and just go hunt mule deer. I mean, I will say the hunting itself wasn't like
Lights out.
no.
We worked.
We worked really hard just to find any bucks, you know, to be able to chase. But man, that was a really cool hunt, and it was like, for me personally, you know, I've been doing some really cool hunts, but it's always like filming it and doing all this stuff, and I was like, I just wanted to go do this family trip and just hunt and not worry about doing all the other stuff, and that was awesome to be able to do, which Tyler, you and Uncle Mike both were successful on that. And that was your first mule deer?
Yeah, that was my first one at the moment.
Okay, yeah. And then you got one later that we'll discuss. But yeah, that was super cool. But when we first got there, I remember you guys talking about, like, you were there 2 years ago, and you're like, oh man, there's deer everywhere.
4 stalks a
day. 4 stalks a day. It's going to be nuts. We get there, we're like, I ain't seeing anything.
Yeah.
Like, this is kind of difficult, and then that
it turned into a trip where it's just nice to be out here.
Yeah. If it's brown, it's down. On day 2, that happened.
Well, yeah, then that rancher or whatever that was kind of like managing the cattle or something that was on there was like, man, you guys are hunting up here for deer. I haven't seen a deer, or he said,
I haven't seen a buck in 2 years or whatever.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Like, well, we've seen 2, so he must be blowing some. No, it was bad compared to a couple of years prior.
Yeah. Well, we'll kind of make this one a little bit shorter than the whole trip was. But Mason, talk about the opening day. We kind of split up into groups. Tyler wasn't even there yet, I don't believe.
Yeah, I showed up like 2 days late.
Yeah. So you were hunting elk in Montana still, but we split up in groups, me and my dad, and then you went with Uncle Mike. And your dad was just out by himself, I think, at that point, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yep. But so you guys went together, but you guys ended up finding a buck then, and talk a little bit about that story, because that was super cool.
Yeah, we were just kind of moving through the country, glassing, and we were getting on some deer, which was more deer than the prior day when we were just scouting, and it's like any minute we're gonna turn up a buck. And the whole morning just felt so solid. It felt good. And moving through the country, seeing does, finally we find a buck that's bedded underneath a tree. This wide open hillside. It's like one of the only trees on the hillside. And there's a buck under it. And I'm looking at it. I was like, I think I found a buck. And he goes, and he was looking at it too, but he didn't have the quality glass that I had. And he goes, yeah, I think I see it too. So, and I'm looking at it, I get the spotter on it, and I was like, I think it's a big 2-point. My Uncle Mike goes, I love big 2-points. And this whole trip, I'm worried that everybody's going to want a big buck because it's not like a big buck area. So I was pretty pumped to hear that.
Yeah.
And then, so he's like, well, let's just look a little more and see if we find something else. And like 45 seconds goes by, and he's like, all right, let's make a move.
Yeah.
So, we're all jacked up and ready to go, and we make a plan to go after it. And it was across this small, like maybe 3/4 of a mile wide canyon, or maybe a little less. So we have to go back up the canyon out of sight, cross, get on the backside of the ridge that it's on. And I was picturing the top of the ridge where the buck was bedded to be like a big flat, but it was like a knife ridge. So we get on the backside of that knife ridge, and we come up, and we're getting right to the top of the hill. And I was like, all right, the last 30 yards it's all you. And I stayed back, and how we planned it out was he was just going to peek over, and if it was in range, shoot it. And we were and Spartan Forge was the difference maker on this, because we could find the exact tree that it was under, and it made it super easy. And we even measured it out where it's like, okay, it's going to be like a 30-yard shot or less, but from across the canyon looking at it, it's like, there's no way that's 30 yards. It looks like it's 80 yards. But we get over there, and he peeks over, and it's like right below him. Yeah. Just begging for it. and I'm standing back, and I get a cool video of him. He draws back.
That video is great.
It's super cool. And it's off this cliff, and it's super steep right below him, and he pulls back and gets a shot on, and immediately, he's like fist bumping, all jacked up that he got it. And I run up to the cliff, and I get the video of it running away, and it hops. This is kind of funny. And then it hops off this like small cliff down in the bottom and just disappears. And it ended up dying there. But it hops over this cliff, and then a buck starts running up the other side of the canyon. And we go from being on cloud 9 to like, oh shit, So the buck's going up the other side of the canyon, and I start pulling some glass out. I'm looking. I'm like, are you sure you hit it? He goes, I know I hit it. He goes, there's blood flying out of it. And then I get my spotter out, and it's still going up the other side of the canyon that we glassed him from. I get my spotter on, and it's like, there's no hole in it. and he's getting furious at me. And then I start glassing at it harder. It's like, oh no, has a different rack. It's because the one he shot it ended up being, it wasn't a 2x2. It was
3x3, I think.
It was a 3x3 or 3x2. I can't remember. But anyways, I had a split on one side, like a mule deer split on one side, and this one was just a straight 3x3, like a whitetail. Yeah. It's like, okay, it's a different buck, but it came out. This buck jumped over the bank, and a different buck ran out. And up to that point, it was the first buck we seen. So the chances of it being two different bucks, at the time I was like, no way. So anyways, we go down. The blood trail is just phenomenal, and it jumped over that bank and died right there. And then we got a hold of you guys, and you guys found us and helped with the pack out. And overall, it was just everybody's pretty pumped up and happy, and it was a fun day
here. So we got that text. We're like, sweet, we get to go do something. So we're like getting out there, and you guys didn't think we were coming. We had a little ways to go, and we were trying to use your directions, and you'd sent a waypoint, but then it's like the area is so open and look like, okay, like you're not gonna be able to see anything or whatever, or you should be able to see everything, but there's so many little coulees and cliffs and drop offs you can't. So like we're at the spot. I'm like, he's got to be somewhere near here.
And we had service at the top when I texted you. And
you hadn't found it at that point.
Yeah.
So we're like, are they blood trailing a mile away at this point, or where? And I went up on this little top of the knob, and I saw you guys down in the bottom underneath some aspens that were just little stretch aspens in this open country, and so we went down there, and you guys had it half cut up at that point, but we all packed it out, and everybody was dying. It was like 80-some degrees, and we're coming out, and everybody's just smoked, like just dying. But it was really cool to get that out and be pumped up. And that was one of those things, like for me too, man, I'd be happy shooting that buck any day, and especially there. And
the stalk made. I mean, the stalk is what you dream about.
Like one of the coolest things about that stalk is 2 years prior, I missed a really nice buck. Same exact bed, same exact 60
Yeah,
foot
you
clip.
showed that picture, and it was the exact
I
same
showed
spot.
him, like, look, you can see my 2 arrows sticking in its bed. I don't know how I missed it. Yeah. 2021 was a terrible year. I think I was over 9 or something like that with my bow. Like, very bad.
Even South Dakota in general, we had a big group in South Dakota that year, 2 years prior, and there was like 9 shot there. I can't remember how. There's like 9 or 10 shots between the group, and 0 deer were packed off packed off that zone.
Well, yeah, you get those high winds and everything that you get there, because there was one day we couldn't even you couldn't really shoot because it was like 40-mile-per-hour winds, and you'd have to be like sub 20 yards to be in the game. But yeah, it was super cool. In that video I had posted, anybody wants to check it out, it's on my Instagram, probably back in October, I think I posted it. But it was pretty cool. So, and then after getting that out and everything, everybody's on cloud 9, and it was kind of funny because Mason was kind of like the ringleader of the group because he had been there before, and you had been too, but you weren't there at that point. So he was kind of like, leading us, and he felt this pressure of like everybody's gonna want big bucks, and we were just like happy to be out and doing that. And before we get into your success, I'll just kind of talk briefly about me and my dad. So we had the original spot we were at, we weren't really finding deer, which was a spot that you guys, kind of sent us because you'd found a bunch of deer 2 years prior. So, but then we'd moved and just kept moving around these areas, and we saw a bunch of does and some bucks on the private. And so I was like, we got to get close to some private borders and see them coming out of this open stuff. And we got up on the spot that honestly I didn't think you'd get to. I marked it from home on Spartan Forge, but I've done this before where you mark these ultimate glassing points that are inaccessible.
Can't get to.
But there was a little spot that we could get up, and we got up on top of it, which the wind just beat the living hell out of you because it's just wide open top, and just like, I mean, we were so wind burnt and just like beat down. But my dad got, 2 stalks. It was on the same 2 bucks, but he stalked them twice. Once he blew them out, and then got on him again, and he ended up missing. And the wind the wind took his arrow. Like, he's like, I've never seen anything like it. It was so bad. And then,
well, you don't get that kind of practice here in Pennsylvania because the wind doesn't blow like that. But it's a whole nother world.
Oh yeah, and then I had found a buck bedded. It was in a perfect spot. And then he moved, and he went to a group of trees. And this is something I learned about stalking, which ended up leading to me having success in West Virginia. I personally believe is like, even when you can't see him exactly, you just got to believe that he's there and make every step like that deer is there, and don't give up. Because I was going, and I put my dad on the camera up on the thing. So my dad, he uses a phone and is very good with all that, but not so much, video camera.
Give him more than 2 buttons.
40-mile-per-hour wind with a light tripod and a camcorder up there. He actually did really good, which I was surprised. But he's like, I'm holding this down. My binos are blowing down over here. And he's trying to, like, watch it, but also, like, looking, having the camera on it.
That's how strong the wind was, to put it in perspective. Yeah. If you had a tripod set up with a spot and scope or binoculars, it would blow it over sometimes.
Yeah, you couldn't use a spotter.
No, my tripod has that little hook. I had to hang weight from it just to keep it from blowing over. But I get down there, and I get into this group of trees, and I'm like, well, it must have blew them out at this point because I can't see anything, and I'm sneaking through, and went back and watched the footage. That buck was in there the whole time, and I was in there for like 10 minutes in a group of like 4 trees, and never knew that the wind was howling so bad that buck blew out. The wind shifted at one part, and I think he must have caught me. And you see that buck blowing out over there. You see me crawling like, in the tree. It's pretty cool footage. And there was actually another deer in there too. It was a doe that it blew out about the same time, and I didn't see any of them, and I just thought that maybe the deer slipped out one of these little drainages or whatever. And then a few days later found that buck that was grouped up with 2 other bucks that had went again. We'd been watching them for a couple days at that point, but they kept betting just on the private. And one day they were the spookiest deer I've ever seen. Like anything that would happen, those things would just run for like a half mile and then stop. And they went up into this timber, and I could see one of them, and again, marked it on Spartan Forge. I mean, I went over it plenty of times. Me and my dad are looking at the map. I'm like, I think they're right here. And it was actually to a point where I went and got to my truck and drove up and around, and then had a drop way down this drainage. I was counting for thermals and all this stuff to try to sneak in on them. And then I get to the spot. I'm like, all right, I should be within 70 yards of them. But then you have this second guessing because you can't see them, and you're going like, are they actually there? Are they not? You know, I'm going back and forth. And that's the biggest thing I learned with stalking is like, by the time you can get to your place on the stalk, you don't know what can happen. The sun's shifting, the shade's shifting, so they're moving beds, and I should have just trusted that they were there. And I kind of was like, I could see the one log that I thought one of them was laying against, and I just kind of like stood up, and all of a sudden there goes this goofy one that I wanted to shoot. He wasn't the biggest one, but he was like in velvet, just kind of probably didn't have any balls or anything. This goofy son of a bitch. And he runs out, and I'm like, dang it. And I sprinted after this deer because he went around. I could see on the map there was this little thing, and I thought I could cut him off. And I would just assumed all the deer blew out at that point. Well, apparently he was the only one that blew out of those 3 bucks. And then I'm like walking back, and I'm like, dang it, like, you know, whatever. And I walk over just to see where they were bedded at, and the other bucks were there, and they blew out. And I'm like, if I would have just stayed in my plan and treated it that way, like, I think that, you know, even when you think your odds are low, execute the stalk like as if it's your last stalk. And I really, and I'll tell the story on a later podcast with West Virginia, but I think that's what led to me being able to shoot that buck, because I thought my odds of success were about 0. And but anyways, on that was a learning lesson. That was the only last opportunity I had. But you guys,
that leads perfectly like into like what me and Mason. So me and Mason were like rotating between my dad and Uncle Mike, switching off as partners, and I think me and Mason became partners, I don't know, like the night number 4 or something like that. And I mean, it's like 5:30, half hour light. We spot this nice mule deer like 1 mile away, half hour light, and we're sitting there like, is it even possible to get there in time, stuff like that. And then I'm like, neither of us have been on a stalk yet, and it's day number 4. I'm like, so I went running after it. Terrible wind, terrible stalk. I'm like, I'm racing like daylight. I'm not even racing like to have a good stalk or anything like that. And then so I start slipping through all this thick stuff. It was like one of those nasty coulees you can't see. You're like trying to look right underneath your feet, see if it's there. Crept up. Next thing you know, I just blow it out, draw back, and just like trotting 5 yards away. And like anybody that mule deer hunted, like when they're leaping like that, like you just feel like they're begging for it. Like I don't think I've ever wanted to shoot at a running deer more in my life, because it's just prancing like happy, and this 10 yards away and sitting there haunting me. Hiked out of there, got back at dark.
It was a low percentage, but you got to give yourself a chance.
Yeah, the fact that neither one of us have been on a stalk yet, last half hour, a mile away, it's like, like what can go wrong?
Worst
like,
case scenario, it runs off.
Exactly, yeah.
Or you just go back to camp and don't get a stalk at all.
Amen. So I think the next day, me and Mason were partners again, and like that was a day where it was like insane.
Can you stop calling us partners?
Sorry,
we were hunting together.
We're buddies. We're hunt buddies.
Yeah.
There. No. So that next morning, I remember that was the coldest morning ever, and like we were bouncing around trying to find bucks and whatnot. And I remember
it was stupid cold and stupid windy.
Like,
I remember glassing back.
I was just about
glass. Like 2 miles away, we could see Beau and your dad up on your glassing pit.
They were up there cuddling.
Completely exposed to the elements.
Yeah.
Getting pounded.
we ended up glassing in a different direction because we couldn't see, because the wind was blowing so hard on us in one direction.
The wind chill had to have been -20.
Yeah. I think it was. Yeah, it was cold. Like I remember that for sure. And then so technically, like this is where I appreciate Mason a boatload, because the night before I went on my stalk, so he's next up. At least that's how like we usually hunt when we were together. Like whoever spots the first one, you go, and after that you alternate, stuff like that. So first thing in the morning, so cold, I'm like, big buck. I'm like, it wasn't even that big, whatever. But like we weren't seeing many bucks. So like we're all pumped up. We're watching. We're like, we just gotta wait for it to bed. Wait for it to bed. A half hour goes by. Mason's like, I don't know if that deer will excite me. You can go. Like he's like I shot mule deer, bragging a little bit because he just got that droptine one. But but either way, Mason gave me the okay. I'm like, all right, sweet. So we watched it, and like these coolies aren't nasty. Like when you get down those ditches, I mean, it's 15-foot vertical walls. So like we watch this thing just disappear in one of these ditches. So like, well, you got to go. It's somewhere in there. And then, like I remember, like with a leather glove and everything I was wearing, like I couldn't even hold my bow, and like I'm just dying. Wind's perfect, but I'm so cold. I'm like I can't feel my hand or anything. So I'm starting to like rush this stalk a little bit, like just creeping over, looking underneath my feet in these ditches. And I'm like looking in the main ditch that has like a 15-foot wall, and I look to my right, and I just watch it stand out of a hole like at 10 yards, draw back, and then it just trots off asking for it again. I'm like, why do they have to just prance like that? It's like slow enough where you have confidence you can hit it, and then let the bow down. It circled out, disappeared like 80 yards later, and then I just sit down. I'm like, I just ruined another opportunity there. And out of nowhere, this deer just started coming back. It's like 60, 70. Well, sorry, 70, 60. And then it got to like 50. I'm like, I might have a play. So I dipped down like where he was bedded in that hole, got another 10 yards close, popped up, and he's this skyline. He's like perfectly with the sun though. And I'm like, I can't even see it. And then, so it's 40 yards. I literally can't see because he's blocking the sun. And then he disappears again. I'm like, it's just not meant to be. So I back out, and I'm about to go climb like this cliff. Like Mason's like 300 feet above me on this nasty cliff. And then he's just up there playing charades. Arm movement going like left, right. Like he's like pointing, like doing beds, sleeping signs, like everything. I'm like, I don't even know what's going on anymore. Like I'm sitting there, and then I'm like, I'm giving up. Like this is Mason's stalk anyways. I'm going to go up. He knows where it's at apparently. And they just kept pointing like underneath him, like underneath this 300-foot cliff. I'm like, well, the wind's blowing right there. It's not worth it. And then I start going up to him. And he's just like more like aggressively just giving me hand signals. I'm like, well, there's one little mound I can't see. Let me just walk up that. Wind's terrible. I'm like, I'm not going to.
And to your defense, it's like it's not a flat, but it's like from where you were, it looks like you would be able to see everything. But there's one mound, and it was bedded between this mound and this cliff that I was standing on. I was like, it's right below me, and then I'm doing like the gesture, like it's sleeping on a pillow, you know.
And then I'm like, yeah. So I'm looking at this like grassy opening. I'm like. Then I see like this 20-foot low hill. I'm like, there's no way it's behind it. I'm like, all right, let me just walk up there. So like nonchalant, I'm just walking, wind's at my back, whatever. I'm like, this is a waste of time. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know where this deer's at. Mason's saying right below him, whatever. And then I poke my head up. All of a sudden, you just see a rack like feeding. I'm like, drop down. I'm like, sub 10. I don't know. Draw back, stand back up. But like, there's shrubs. Like the whole way down, like the perfect angle. So like all I can see is its spine. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna aim like a little low. I think like I'm 10 yards, fixed broadhead. I'm like, I can punch through this or whatever. Shoot. I ended up like hitting the spine, dropped it, and then finished it off there. And I'm like, that's done. And then I don't even know where you went. You didn't even know I got it.
Yeah, I moved. I went to get on an exit route thinking, he's going to screw this up. And he's going to run right up this avalanche chute to where I am, and I'm going to shoot him.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going down there. I'm waiting for him to run back up.
Yeah. So, yeah, then eventually I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I got it. And then he's like, wait, really? And he's like, where at? Whatever. He's like, I'm right underneath him. He's just 300 feet above me, like as crow flies, 100 yards.
I was waiting in my escape route, and I get a BBD text.
Oh, yeah, I sent it to the family before I even told Mason. Like, he's like, what did you do? Like, send that as soon as you shot him? I'm like, yeah. Morale was low. We went 4 days without killing something, so. Yeah, and then Mason came down. Yeah, so, it was perfect. He gave me that second stalk in a row, so I appreciate that. And, yeah, we got her out of there, and
it was a scenic spot, too. That was
just
cool.
That cliff face, like, pretty sweet.
That was a cool spot, because I know where you shot it at, because we were glassing that spot a few days prior to that, and that's one of the coolest places.
Oh, yeah.
And there was, like, those deer that would bed in those coulees and those holes was, I don't even know how to explain it, but, like, you'd look at this landscape and not see anything, and then all of a sudden you just keep looking, and there'd be one like tucked under a bank, like, and it was just
they disappear
in this wide open landscape, and all of a sudden you'll see one, and I remember talking to Mason ahead of time, and he's like, like deer will just appear out of nowhere, and that's exactly what it was. And it was like really looking in every little spot that you possibly could to be able to find them. But they were super skittish, and we were super lucky from a hunting pressure standpoint. Opening day was kind of crazy. There was, it wasn't a big area, but there was quite a few people there. But kind of played a little bit of tricks with some people that ran into me, and they'd be like, "Oh, sorry," I'm like, "Oh, no worries," talking to them, and like, "Oh, where?" I'm like, "Well, we got a couple guys over there," and it was true, but we was like, a couple guys over there, and he's like, "Oh." And he's like, "All right, I'll go this way," and come back, and all the camps are gone after opening day.
Well, I think we kind of mind screwed them opening day, where we were pretty ambitious opening day, where it was like an hour and a half before it got light. We went. we went
blaring music through camps.
Oh yeah, we went past all their camps, blaring music,
and there was no light. Like nobody was even up yet, and we have multiple trucks going past our campsites.
Yeah,
everybody was mind screwed at that point.
They're like, "Man, there's some hardcore guys."
Yeah. Or they're thinking that camp's over there, and now we have two people driving in this early in the morning. There's people going to
be all so over. Everybody pretty much it was like our own. I don't know how 7,000 acres or more.
Big chunk.
It felt like our own little zone.
Yeah,
it was cool.
No, like we said earlier, it wasn't the best deer habitat there, but there was some deer there, and we picked up some sheds and everything, so that was cool. But no, it was a cool trip. Like I don't remember if it was one Mason or someone was like, "Would you go back there again?" And I was like, there was points of the trip where I was like, "Man, I don't know if I'd go to this exact spot," but I was like, I would. That was fun. Like it was fun to get everybody together, and
it's cool country.
and we did it kind of relaxed. Like it wasn't a super hardcore trip.
Yeah.
Like there was the spot you killed yours was the furthest point that you could probably. Oh, and Uncle Mike was probably the furthest point that you could kill from place you could park. But it was just fun to have that atmosphere. We came back to camp, and we'd come back sometimes in the middle of the day and cook up food, and we were having beers at night and whiskey.
The camp made it for
sure. The camp was, and that was kind of our intention with it, was to have more of a fun versus hardcore grinding it, like you do on a backpack hunt or do during the rut whitetail hunting.
It was the best I've ever eaten on a trip.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we had clam chowder. Beau ate 4 raw hot dogs in a row.
Lizzie Gobbler. How'd it throw out?
With no bunny, one bite each of them.
Just slurp them. No ketchup, just raw.
But no, it was a great trip. We ate backstraps. I brought some fresh chicken eggs from my chicken farm.
Yeah,
we ate pretty well.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, and it was funny. And like and your dad loves to cook and like do that stuff. So it was funny watching your guys' dynamic, and you're cooking, and your dad's like telling you what to do. Yeah, like, "Dad, just let me cook."
Yeah, he likes being in charge. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have these seasonings. I remember I gave him the better backstrap seasonings. Like, just pour this on there. I'm like, "Yeah, just pour that on there." He's like, "Oh, that's pretty good." I'm like, and it was pretty funny. But we just had I think I had my camp chef there. Half of it was the griddle, and then half of it was the burner. And did we have any other cooking? I don't remember if my dad brought his Blackstone or not, but it was like it was a pretty good setup. Like,
and Kurt's wall tent was pretty awesome for some of those colder nights. We were in there just kind of hanging out. I can't remember if we played cards or not, but we brought some cards.
I think we just drank a bottle every night. There's a lot of us.
There was some bourbon that was going down while we were there. That was for sure. And when you came in, it was funny. We texted like, "Bring beer."
Yeah, we ran out of that pretty quick too.
Yeah. Oh no, that was really fun. Such a cool trip, and like you said, we did start finding deer. It was just, and it's one of those things. I mean, kind of like your Colorado hunt or this. It's like if there's a tag allotment in an area, there's enough animals to be able to hunt. It's just sometimes they're going to be a little bit harder to find than places that are, loaded with them essentially. So it was just, and there wasn't. We did find me and my dad found one really, really big deer, and we're like, holy cow, big deer. And then we look at the map and it's on private. And it's like, okay, that makes sense why it's there. And you had tried contacting the landowner before we went out there and couldn't get a hold of them to see if we could get permission to get on there. But because I think you had seen some nice deer over there a few years ago.
Yeah, they just won't cross that line onto the public. So I see from the first trip, like you said, I knew that we seen big deer over there and I wanted permission, but we couldn't make it happen.
Yeah, no, it was a really, really cool trip. I definitely would do it again. And, missed out in the beginning of PA archery for a couple years in a row, but it's all right. October's not the most fun time to hunt here, but yeah, it was a good time. And then from there, what was the next? I mean, you guys both killed mule deer.
I think he got one.
Yeah, I probably got one like 2 weeks after that trip.
Was it?
Yeah.
So you kill one mule deer, your first one, and you're like, yeah, let's go.
It's pretty easy, yeah.
And but talk about that hunt a little bit. That was a rifle hunt.
Yep. So I think it was like around like October 25th. I don't even know the date when I got it, but I remember it was like Wednesday. I was sitting at work. We're getting snow warnings left and right, and then next thing you know, come Wednesday, I think we got like 12 inches of snow in town. I'm like, here we go. Just like last year, it's like I got snowed out at all my spots. So I started had a game plan. Like last year was a learning curve. I'm like, oh, you can't drive these Forest Service roads typically in November and October because there's so much snow. And then, so I'm at work and like sitting there like, okay, well, I got all the snow. I know I can't drive on these roads. And then I just start looking at places, like trying to find a new spot. I'm like, okay, here's a county road. If I can just make another 2 miles on this Forest Service road and park there and hike extra far in, whatever. So then I think it was like Thursday. So we got all this fresh snow. I went out on Thursday after work. So here I am with 45 minutes of light. You're not going to kill them from the couch. So it's like, I don't care if I have 45 minutes. So I go in there. Next thing you know, I see like 30 mule deer. I'm like, I didn't even know mule deer lived here. I never set foot here like in my life. And then right at last light, I started seeing like little 3x3s and stuff. And I'm like, okay, they're in here. So then I went out Friday. And then finally made it up higher, like 1,000 feet up. I mean, I got there and I had 2 minutes to glass before it got too dark. And then I started seeing like shooters, like I would say. I'm like, okay, tomorrow's Saturday. I'm like, I got to come in here early, stuff like that. And then, so I think that day it was like -2, wind chill was like -15. It was cold. And it was like so we got like 18 inches of snow at this elevation. And it just sounds like, like that cold snow sounds like farts or something like that. It's just so squeaky. Like, it's just really loud. And I make it to the top. And then I'm sitting there glassing. I'm like, why is nothing, like, moving? All of a sudden, I think I saw, like, 8 moose that morning. And I'm like, okay, it's like 9 a.m. Sun's starting to come out. Like, where are all the deer? And then it's just weird. I don't know if it was the cold or whatever. But, like, all of a sudden, it's like, group of 10 does, group of 10 does, group of 10 does, group of 10 does. So I had like 4 different herds. I think that, there was like 30-some does I saw. I'm like, okay, I'll just watch them. Like, it's like late October. I'm like, there's got to be some pre-rut action or something like that. And then next thing you know, I just see a giant, like just huge mainframe, like 4x4. I'm like, holy cow. And then I would just watch them disappear. And I'm like, fresh snow. I'm like, all I have to do is run over there and track them. So then I do like this big loop, circle around. And then I'm like looking down where it's like I found his tracks, but then they're heading like right underneath me. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be a lot harder. Like this place is nasty blowdowns, thick, small pine trees, like the classic like 10-foot pine trees. So you're just glassing like little openings. So I start working down. I'm like, well, his tracks are heading to me. All I have to do is cut them and just track them, and I'll get them. And then I'm dropping down, and he just pops up like 50 yards away, and like he went through like one opening. As soon as I got my scope, he disappeared. Then he popped out 100 yards, disappeared. 200 yards, disappeared. And then I'm like devastated. I'm like, this thing is the biggest mule deer I've ever seen in Montana. And then, so this is where it started getting like, where I started messing up. I'm like, oh, I saw him go down here. I'm really lazy because I don't want to walk through these blowdowns. I'm like, I think I can find where I can cut his tracks off. So I didn't track him. I get down there, and then there's like 30 doe tracks. And I'm like, I don't know which track is his. So I started following this herd. I'm bumping does here. I'm bumping more does here. And then I'm like, okay, I'm just going to climb to the tippy top again, like where I bumped and bedded. When I was climbing up there, I ended up seeing the buck that I ended up getting, and he was just bedded. And like it was a miracle because at first it was just 6 does, like 200 yards off. And then I'm like, okay, the glass immediately saw him bedded with his 6 does. I'm like, oh, sweet. And then they got up, And then I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, it's a nice 4x4, but I'm like, there's a giant somewhere in here. I can't do this. And then so I watched them. Then they rebed down. And then so I watched them, I think, for 45 minutes, pulled out my spotter and everything. He's only like 250 yards. And I'm like, if I never saw that big one, I'd be happy with this one. So then got down on the gun, got comfortable, eventually stood up, and then ended up dropping them right there. And so, I mean, I was pretty pumped with them. Like, in the moment, I thought I was settling. I was, like, disappointed in myself. I walked up, and I was like, okay, he's...
Yeah, that was an old buck.
Oh, yeah. He had, like, no teeth left. Like, the typical, like, crab claws, because, like, he just is all mass. Lost all his time length, stuff like that. And, yeah, I thought I could do him in one trip, so I quartered him up, threw them all in my backpack. I think I made it 50 yards walking downhill, and my legs just kept giving out. I'm like, so I'm not a big guy, but, I mean... This is like one of the bigger mule deer bodies. Like Abby's was huge too, and it was compared to that, and ended up having to do 2 trips.
Oh, and how big do you think that first one was? If you thought that one was, the one that you shot was, small when you shot it, but the other one had to have been,
I don't know, like 180 plus, something like that.
Oh my gosh!
Like, I was shocked. Like I do like a lot of scouting, a lot of driving around, stuff like that, and never saw a deer that big in Montana. And then I thought I was like settling, shooting like a small one, and I don't even know what mine is, but it's pretty good for Montana.
And it's just an old buck, man.
Yeah.
Like that.
And I think the experience of it makes it too, because all the deep fresh snow and the backdrop where you killed it, the scenery was epic.
Yeah, epic scenery, nasty terrain to walk through. It was a long day. Yeah, so I think I shot like at 10 a.m. I don't think I got home to like 6 p.m. Like just 2 trips. I think it was like 3,000 vertical feet that day. It was a long day.
Some lessons from that was follow the track, don't take the shortcut.
Yeah. If I thought I could just cut them off, not walk through the blowdowns. Yeah. So that big one's still out there. I don't think many people hunt there too. It's not a fun spot to hunt. You can't glass it that well, and so I got high hopes.
Yeah. Oh, that's for sure.
Stay on track, so. Definitely.
That'll drive you nuts, knowing that one's in there like that.
Yeah, it means he's bigger this year.
Or he's regressing.
Yeah, he might. Yeah, I might shoot him. Now he's gonna be like just as big as the one I got this year.
Yeah. Keep doing that, shooting these really old ones.
Yeah, crab claws and all that.
Like Mason does. Mason's all about crab claws.
That's right.
That's funny. And yeah, so you had an unbelievable season. 2 mule deer, and then in the pronghorn there early on.
Yep. No elk again though.
Kurt, you called it too with Tyler. I mean, kind of similar to with you and Abby, but the first year Tyler had a lot of opportunities and a big learning curve with not a lot of success. And you were like, Tyler's second year, he's got that experience under his belt. He's learned that, and you had a pretty incredible year this year. All the school of tough knocks or whatever you call it.
Hard knocks. Yeah.
Hard knocks last year. I mean, it paid off for you this year. Next year, I think.
Yeah.
With even more gain experience in those areas, I think.
Yeah. Like I remember like year 1, like moving to Montana. It's like I'd pick a weekend of Saturday and Sunday. Like Saturday I'm gonna go to this spot, Sunday I'm gonna go to this spot, and like I'd burn weekends. Like weekends are pretty valuable out there. You only got like 6 weekends or whatever, and it's just like never cut a track here, and just kept doing that. And like this year, I feel like opening weekend, I'm diving in right into that buck's nest, elk's nest, stuff like that.
Yeah. Now you're gonna be set up for all of us when we go out there. You can put us on the
the guiding business.
Put us on them.
Well, that's how it happened for us. Our first years out there. The first year is like just got so just demoralized. Like we weren't seeing mule deer. We hunted them hard. And then we finally found a really good spot. Yeah. And then they had some success that year, but that following year was just unreal.
Yeah.
Well, you learn an area or learn areas. And like Tyler, you spent a ridiculous amount of time scouting and like doing, and that paid off when the season had opened, because you were doing a bunch of pre-scouting years before and shed hunting, and like you're learning these spots over and over, and it's just, then things start rolling and happening.
But yeah, I think for anybody, advice, if you're going to go out of state to hunt, like find one area, learn that area, and just keep going back there year after year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. As hard as it may be, because you want to see new country, that's how you're going to be successful.
Yeah. If your priority is success, which I think it is for a lot of people, it's like find an area and stick to it. Like even I remember in Colorado where we first started elk hunting at, like that wasn't the best area to hunt elk, not nearly, but after 3 years of hunting it, I felt like I knew that area pretty good. You know, like you started picking up on things and trends and starting to understand it. So it became better.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can find them anywhere. It's just learning those spots, finding where they're at, and then learning that area, learning their escape routes, just kind of going through it. So, but Kurt, what about you went back out, you know, you obviously live in Pennsylvania now, but you went back out with your father-in-law and some of your in-law family to go hunt then here in November.
Yeah, we did a rut hunt in Montana again. So we all had deer and elk tags. And this is, again, plays into it where we were hunting areas that I was very familiar with from the 2 years prior hunting. So it cut our learning curve immediately. I mean, there wasn't a single day on that hunt where I didn't see something I could have filled my tag on, which was, I mean, when I say see, I'm talking about, sorry, not see. There wasn't a single day where I didn't have a shot opportunity at something I could have filled my tag on. And I mean shot opportunity as in something standing still, clean shot that I could have made if I wanted to, but I was being more selective this year because I still had meat from last year. But day one, I got a bull the year prior, so I'd set my sights on something bigger than what I'd got the year prior. Like I wasn't just going to settle for a raghorn this year or spike or whatever. First day we're up there, a bull, two really nice bull are standing 140 yards broadside in an open field, but it was 50 yards on private. It walks on the public, and it's behind a giant tree. We can't see it. We could never get on him again. So that was the way we started the trip. But it was like, yes, we're on stuff. We're seeing stuff. Days go by. I had a spike at 30 yards, broadside feed, and I watched him for a little bit. Got bored. I thought he was going to be with bulls. He wasn't. Got bored, left him. But, I mean, it was just like one of the things I did on this trip, different than any other time, was I just completely trusted my instincts on everything, which I don't normally do. And a lot of that comes from I like hunting by myself. So finding the right hunting partner to go with me each day that was like okay with we just had a snack and 5 minutes later something's telling me just to sit down and have another snack. Even though I'm not hungry, I did it. And we'd sit down and I mean, I guess I'll go into it. So we found a really good mule deer area the day before. Came down. There was one of the guys had seen a big buck in that area. We couldn't find it, but there's rubs everywhere, fresh sign everywhere. Kind of getting late, so we're like, all right, I turned on slope angle on Spark Forge, found a bench, started walking that bench out. We were still hunting. I mean, we were going quiet, like way slower than I would have ever gone in the past. Like just because I've learned now that like you don't just because you're, I don't know, moving through, like go slower than you think you have to go. You get away with a lot. And sure enough, we're walking, and all of a sudden, two cow elk stand up at 60 yards. I mean, stand up broadside. It was a mom and calf. And the guy with me, Derek, had never shot a cow or an elk before. So I was like, dude, it's all you. Like, we both had tags for it. I was like, it's all you. Pulls up, shoots, perfect shot. It runs 50 yards, piles up. And so we cut it up, had to pack that out. And next day we're going in to get the rest of the meat because it was pretty late and we weren't going to do it all one day. Because we were 3.5 miles back. Anyways, on the way up, I was like, let's just not bull through there and go up there. Let's just still hunt the whole way up. And so we did that, and we're going up a trail, which previously I'd figured this area out enough that I don't never take the trail because I feel like all the deer bed and elk bed watching the trail. Like they plan their bedding areas around that. But we were going up it, and that was, again, like we'd just taken a break, and this area is unique in that you can hunt whitetail, mule deer, and elk all within a mile of each other. And there's like certain subsections of it. So like you hit a certain point, and I'm like, all right, now we're looking for mule deer. And we're going up this area, and I was like, I turned around at him, and I was hunting with Derek again, and he's just, me and him kind of connect when we're hunting together. Like there's no like, when he says he wants to do something, I don't argue. When I say I want to do something, he kind of like trusts me and stuff with that. And I look at him, I was like, dude, I know we just had a snack, but let's just sit down and let's give it 5 minutes just looking with binoculars, and then we'll grab a little bite, and continue on. And we weren't like anywhere where you think you'd ever want to pull binoculars out, like thick pines, all that kind of stuff. When we sit down and I put my binoculars on my knees, and immediately there's a very large mule deer, like 110 yards away. I'm watching it. I'm like, dude, big buck, big buck. He goes, are you serious? I'm like, yes. So I get and it was feeding. So I was like, I had time. I get my shooting sticks out. I have my rifle on the shooting sticks. I'm steady. I'm watching him through it. And he was kind of in like that brushy enough area where you lose him pretty frequently. And it's like, you have to keep like looking up. All right, that's where he was. And you find him in the scope. And every time I found him, there was just too much brush across his body that I didn't feel comfortable sending a bullet through. And in recent years, I've been really selective with my shots, and it's paid off because it's like I don't trust brush, and when I have a clear shot, I get him every time. When I don't, I just don't like that not knowing, I guess. And he walked off. I never got a shot, so that haunted me. Whatever, but I guess the moral of the story there was just trusting your gut and everything. Like, there's no reason I should have stopped there. Like, if there had been another person.
But what do you think made your gut tell you to stop there?
I really don't know. I think maybe a combination of every experience I've had in that area that just didn't add up to me at the time, that my body was like, just stop here. Like,
yeah.
And yeah, other than a sixth sense, I don't know how else to explain.
You were seeing a lot of big rubs in there too, though, right?
Not on that part of the trail at the time. But so the interesting thing there too is there was a little saddle at the very top, and where he walked, I was like, okay, he didn't get spooked by us either, but there was an escape route up there, this really steep area, and there was a saddle that would have been a perfect escape route out of that whole valley. So I was like, he's probably bedding up in that way. So I did a big wrap around on top. Never found him again, but I found some amazing bedding areas and like mule deer sign in that spot. I found a spike elk that had died probably 5 years ago I don't know how it died, but its horn was stuck under a tree and its head was like flipped over the logs. It either fell and lodged under a blowdown and broke its neck, or a tree fell on its head and killed it. But just like stuff that not many people had walked through because it was a really steep area. But anyways, it was just, again, learning those areas of being super familiar with one spot. But didn't end up panning out there. We ended up seeing some more big bucks, no shot opportunities. We were renting Forest Service cabins, and at that point, our next Forest Service cabin was a little bit further away, so I didn't get to go back to that spot. But I went to the spot where I had killed my mule deer buck the year before, and that area I know like really, really well. I think I did like 12 straight days in that same spot, dark to dark, the year before. So like, I mean, that year before I basically had doe, everything but named. Like, I knew the herds. They were familiar with me coming up in the same spot every day, and it was like I could check a herd because it's rut, so I was checking a herd for bucks and moving on. And saw the one that I ended up killing. It didn't excite me the first day that I saw it. I watched it for a while. I could have had it in the scope, just didn't get my heart pumping, I guess, and I go a lot off that. The next day, though, I was going through, and again, I trusted my gut on something. I normally would have walked right out this point, and I was like, I'm just going to hang a little bit off to the left. I won't be able to see the valley to the right, but it's just, I don't know why. I'm just not going to do that, though. And so I hung down onto the left, and there were some like thicker pines and stuff. And again, going slower than you think you should go, I heard sticks breaking below me, and it was one stick break. It wasn't like something running. So I stopped to look down there. I caught a flash of a buck go by, and I pulled my binoculars up, and a buck came right by behind it. And it wasn't like spooked buck. It was chasing a doe. So I just started, I think I started running in the direction it was going, because the way my wind was going is they were headed for where my scent would be blown. So I started running up the ridge, and the sound of the wind kind of actually, I think, covered my me breaking any sticks or whatever. But I got up there. Eventually it spooked him, but I knew if I'd spook him, there was another hillside right across from me, because it was a very shallow drop. And sure enough, it came hopping out, like Tyler says, that irresistible mule deer hop.
Oh, yeah.
And he stopped. He was 110 yards and shot him there. And it was the same one I saw the year before, but just the day before, but the circumstances and everything just got my heart pumping, got me to the point where I was excited about it. yeah, it was a good hunt. I think everybody in the group got deer, and we got a cow elk. So
Nice.
it was I think we were there 9 days, but in every day everybody saw elk, or not everybody saw elk, but every day somebody had a chance at an elk or mule deer or something. So
Yeah.
again, that would have never happened if we weren't just super familiar with an area year after year.
Yeah, no, 100%. There's a lot to be said about that.
Because you could go into that spot, and I have gone into that spot the very first year that I was there, and I never saw a thing. And now I go into it looking at, instead of just looking at it as this one mountainside, I can, like, there's these little micro areas within each spot that I'm just like, okay, that's where I'm going to spend all my time. And yeah, it really pays off.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. But it was a really good year all around for everybody. And looking at this year, I was, I'm still hunting, technically in the 2023 season, but it's like, so I'm still kind of in that mindset. But I am thinking out at 2024, and I'm like, all right, what do I want to do? And this year I went to Alaska and I in South Dakota and didn't do like a normal elk trip or anything. But I was like, all right, I think I want to go back and hunt elk, and I want to go back and do that. In Montana, I'm set up pretty good this year I have enough points that I should be able to draw a general tag, and I have a good amount of bonus points to draw a limited entry tag. So I'm like, okay, I think that's going to be the plan. I think, Mason, you're kind of in the same boat that we might be able to.
If I can get the general.
If you can get the general, you don't have any preference points to be able to draw the general. So the way Montana works for non-resident is you have to draw a general tag to even be put into the pool to draw a limited entry tag. So yeah, and it's really weird how that. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on it, but essentially, like, what is it a max of 2 preference points, or can you get more?
Max of 3.
Is it a max of 3? Okay, but normally you have like a 90-some% chance with 2 points to be able to draw it. 1 point, you have like less than 50%.
1-0, that's the weird.
Is it really?
1-0 and 0 is like 70% chance.
Okay,
or something.
and so Mason's been playing the 0 point game of like trying to get that tag, but not built. So you have a little bit of less of a chance, but there's still a decent chance of you being able to get it. So hopefully we can, do that archery elk, and then have a mule deer tag too. So that'd be cool.
Right.
Yeah. What about Tyler? Are you gonna stick? I mean, Montana, you have unlimited tags.
Yeah.
Like, so is that going to be kind of your play for this?
Yep, same thing. Yeah. So I mean, elks. I'm probably gonna throw more vacation at elk now. So usually I've been just doing like 9-day hunts and never touch an elk again until rifle season. Even in rifle season, I'm for some reason still focusing on mule deer. So I got the mule deer out of the way, and yeah, I think 2024 is when I really want to get my elk finally.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, and hopefully we'll all get to potentially hunt together too. So that'd be fun getting to do that for elk. So
yeah, maybe the third time's the charm. Trying to coordinate this hunt.
Yeah, I know. We were supposed to draw without 100% 2 years ago, and I'm pretty sure something happened with our application or they had a problem with the system.
Montana came out. They messed up something that year.
Yeah, because we were supposedly 100% chance. Whether you looked at Go Hunt or Eastman's or whatever, like all those places said we were guaranteed. Like that's what we were planning on, and it didn't. Yeah, it didn't work out. We got the general tags, but not the limited entry one.
I mean, they definitely messed up that year, and they admitted to it. But at least you weren't this past year where everybody drew bighorn sheep tags and then take them all back.
Yeah, like Tim.
Yeah.
They messed up big time.
Got their ruins, their dreams just ruined.
That would hurt.
Yeah, we accidentally gave out 50 extra bighorn tags. It's like they messed up bad this year.
Yeah, 50 people had the best day of their life and the worst day of their life.
Yep.
Well, yeah, Tim Bueno, who I've had on the podcast and I hunted with and stuff before, he drew one.
Yep.
And he got it pulled, but then he had the best day of his life, essentially, with shooting a giant bull and a mountain lion in the same day with his bow. So I got to get him on to talk about that.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. So that's Kurt. What about you? What's your kind of plans for this year?
I have no idea. I have no idea what I'm going to do this year. I got to look at. I have good points everywhere right now. It's just a matter of where I want to go and what I'm willing to hunt, I guess. I don't have a game plan yet, I guess.
Well, no, I mean it's early yet, but we're all kind of in that boat where we've built points over the last 6-7 years to draw some good tags. I know we're all in kind of weird places in Wyoming where, I think Mason, we could draw an elk. Or have you put in for elk points?
I don't know. Michael has elk points.
Yeah, okay.
I don't.
I have enough. I think I could get a general tag, which is crazy. It takes so many points now just to get a general tag. But I have enough for that. Mule deer, I think we're in alignment. We have the same amount of points. I think you might be in the same boat.
Yeah, so is Kurt.
Kurt. And, I think I'm going to wait for a rifle tag there at this point.
I'd like to do a fully outfitted one for that.
Would you?
Yeah, like horseback in. Maybe not guided, but at least wall tent far back in. I think that'd be a fun.
The only thing that really is unfortunate about our mule deer points for Wyoming is they just had that horrible winter too. So it's like you've been saving up for points for this long, and then they have a winter that wipes out like 80% of the deer. It's
so it's we got to wait. Either we got to do it now or wait a long time.
Yeah, and I'm in a weird spot for Colorado elk that I've been I have a bunch of points, but the unit I've been trying to hunt for archery keeps going 1 point ahead of me and point creeping. So it's I don't know if I'm ever going to draw that, but so I got to figure out what to do there. Mule deer, I only have a couple points because I spent all of them in 2021 and then just laid in the hospital, so that didn't help out. But yeah, so there's a bunch of states in New Mexico. There's always a chance of getting that, so I'll be putting in for that as well. But
it might be early rifle mule deer for me in Colorado high country. I don't know yet, but that's what I've been leaning towards, and I have enough points to get the unit I want.
Nice. Well, that'll be cool. Well, I guess that we'll end it on that note, and so Tyler can spend some time with the family and stuff while he's here before he heads back to Montana.
Yeah, before I become a mountain man, disappear for a couple months again.
Yeah, go back into your winter hiding hole. So, but I appreciate everybody coming on and talking here. This was fun. I really enjoyed the fact that we got into the stories about Tyler getting attacked by wild animals.
Yeah,
that I think that made the whole podcast.
Those are just timeless,
Yeah.
I'll never let those ones down.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.